Hello there, Atheist Junior here, your friend and humble narrator. And today I'm going to be doing a sort of late Friday night stream reaction to this latest Whackin' Atheist featuring Kent Hovind and Matt Powell. Uh, this is not the first Whackin' Atheist they've done together. This is a second one. If you want to see my response to the first one they did together, check out my video. It's called Kent Hovind and Matt Powell's Pathetic Response to the Apologia Collab video. And I stand by that title because the video that they showed uh, was a highly edited, very misleading version of the collab video that we did together. Matt Powell edited that video to where it literally he was stitching sentences together to make me say things that I didn't say. He tried to make it sound at one point like I said Matt Powell shouldn't attach his name to Kent Hovind because he's somebody who teaches kids how to shoot rubber bands. And that's not what I said. What I said in the original video was Matt Powell shouldn't attach his name to Kent Hovind because it's very unpredictable what's going to happen at DAL in October in the next few months regarding Kent's guilty verdict and the fact that he's supposed to report to jail. One second, I'm just making sure I got the chat on my phone so I can see it. So let me know how the audio is, guys. And for effect, if I hear something really dumb, I can zoom in for effect, like, really? Really? Like, did you really just say that? So that's going to be fun.
Here we go. The 9 proofs of evolution. Somebody did a 9 proofs of evolution debunked. Have you seen that one? Yeah. Rationality Rules is the guy's name. Okay. That's his code name for himself. I go to which one now? This one? Right, this one. Hit play.
Before we even begin.
Wow, I'm amazed they actually got the video to play without like 10 minutes of technical problems. Although streaming is hard, you know, I'll admit, like, hopefully my stream sounds good right now, but I admit that it is very difficult to do. Kent and Matt, if you ever need tips, you know, hit me up.
Must be made. People very often confuse abiogenesis with evolution when they shouldn't. Abiogenesis is the study of how life first emerged from non-living matter, and it's not discussed within this video. Evolution, on the other hand, is the study of biological change over time, and it is the star of this video.
The star of the video. Now hold it. You can't have something evolve if it doesn't exist. How did life get started?
Wow, I like how he just took the time to point out that biological evolution by natural selection and abiogenesis are not the same thing. And you immediately just prove his point as to why rationality rules had to say this. Like, yeah, of course things can't evolve. Populations have to exist first before they evolve. But biological evolution is one scientific theory that covers a large area of biology, but it doesn't have anything to say about the origin of life. Now, obviously the two are similar to each other, and there's some overlap there, but to say that evolution is false because you don't know what the origin of life is just a cop-out. So that's the reason that he, at the very beginning of the video, has to have this disclaimer, and I'm glad that he did this, where he says, we're not going to talk about that in this video. That's not what this video is about. So good on him for doing that. Obviously, it was necessary.
They don't have a complete theory then.
Well, it's strange how he says that I'm not going to talk about about abiogenesis. That's not evolution. Well, hello, Google chemical evolution. The first thing that comes up is it's defined as abiogenesis. Abiogenesis is defined as chemical evolution. So he says abiogenesis is not evolution. No, it's defined as chemical evolution. It's common knowledge right off the bat. Error.
Chemical evolution? No, even if you're going by Kent Hovind's crappy, like, misdefinition of the 6 types of evolution, his 6 types. Chemical evolution is the origin of chemicals, obviously. It's not the origin of life. Even in his fake 6 definitions, you're getting it wrong. And you're just proving rationality rules right for saying that, because they're not the same as each other.
Right
That's
off
why
the bat.
I divide evolution into 6 different categories. There has to be cosmic evolution first, the origin of time, space, matter. Then
Also, if you haven't seen the debate between King Crocoduck and Kent Hovind, you really should. There's 3 of them, actually. But he makes a really good point in that debate. He asks Kent, well, I have a textbook that talks about the evolution of the Schrodinger equation. Is that part of your 6 steps of evolution? Like, something, putting a word before evolution is just a colloquial term that's used. It's not the same thing as biological evolution, or evolution like the theory of evolution by natural selection that Darwin studied, or the modern synthesis of evolution. So you're conflating 2 things that aren't the same, or in this case, 7 things. But that's what you've built your career on, Kent, so I wouldn't expect anything less from you. And of course, Matt is going to parrot everything Kent says.
chemical evolution, then stellar evolution, then organic evolution. Life has to come in here somehow. Then macroevolution, and then micro, which should not be called that. It's a variation of.
Okay, we'll do a little experiment here. It should be showing my my tab here. Let me know if it's not. I'm Googling it right now. Okay, so chemical evolution may refer to abiogenesis. So this is what Wikipedia says. And it says chemical evolution may refer, which means it might or it can be used to refer to this as abiogenesis, astrochemistry, cosmochemistry, evolution of metal ions in biological systems. So which step is this in your steps of evolution, Kent? The evolution of metal ions in biological systems. Gas evolution reaction, molecular evolution, oxygen evolution, stellar nucleosynthesis. See, I don't agree that, like, this should be, well, I mean, you can call this chemical evolution because it involves chemical elements, but the way Kent is using this, he's intentionally conflating this with the evolution of populations on Earth. So, okay, so technically Matt Powell is right on that, but it says it may refer to abiogenesis, which I don't agree with.
Of the same kind. Okay, let him talk here. Okay.
Oh, Wikipedia.
And with that said, and out of the way,
And we can't trust what Wikipedia says, I thought. Why should we trust what Wikipedia says? Hovind? Wikipedia says that, but that's okay. That's okay.
get on with the video. The evidence for evolution comes from every branch of science that remotely interacts with organisms. Everything we objectively know about the natural world both supports and improves the theory of evolution by natural selection, whether we like it or not. This is 9 proofs of evolution, why evolution is true. Where to begin? Well, the first 2 lines of evidence that I'm going to present both come from the comparative anatomy of whales to land mammals. We've long known that despite whales looking like fish, they're mammals, because just like mammals and unlike fish, they give birth to live young, feed their young milk via their mammary glands, breathe through 2 lungs rather than gills.
That's why they're called mammals, Kent. But this is already a great point. But I already know what Kent's going to say.
Have skin and hair rather than skin and scales, and they're warm-blooded.
And that's proof for what?
It's proof that whales are mammals, even though you would think that they're fish because they live in the sea. They spend their entire lives in the sea. They even give birth in the sea. But they're not fish because they have to surface to breathe air, which seems like a very inefficient design. Like, it blows my mind that whales literally just hold their breath the same way that humans do when we go swimming. It's just that they have massive lungs and are able to do it for a much longer period of time. But there's a reason that the biblical authors thought that a whale was a fish. Because if you don't know any better, it does seem like one. And if you don't know any better, if you look at the horizon, it seems like we live on a flat Earth. But we don't. You need more information than that. That's where science comes in. Thank you, science. Couldn't have done it without you.
There's proof the whale's not a fish. I would agree with that.
I mean, by his logic, you could literally declare that ink pens and squids are related because they squirt ink. I mean, you could declare that a cloud and a watermelon's related because both of them contain water. I mean, this is the type of logic that we're dealing with.
No. No, that is not the same logic, because you're comparing two things that are not living organisms. And I like Kent Hovind's face here. But that is such a stupid thing to say, Matt Powell.
This is the Bible actually says that there are all men have not faith, and that there are wicked and unreasonable men.
Okay, Kerbatais in the chat. Are they teaming up? Where have you been? Yes, they're teaming up. Matt Powell lives at Dinosaur Adventureland now. And these videos are so much worse now. I didn't think it could be worse, but the videos are actually worse now that it's Matt Powell there too.
And who have not faith. So the Bible says that the people who are unreasonable are the people who don't have faith in Christ. This is the most unreasonable thing I've.
Okay, I have a super chat from Regios. It just says test super chat. Thank you, Regios. Thank you. Thank you. One of my patrons. Thank you. Thank you for the support.
Ever heard in my life that things are related just because they have similar characteristics.
I'm still trying to figure out how they fit all them whales into a dot.
Okay, well, I guess I'll explain this again, even though apparently Kent watches my videos now because he's referenced me on a bunch of videos now. But I'll explain this again. Shortly after the Big Bang started, or cosmic expansion started, because we don't know what happened, scientists don't know what happened until a very, very short time after cosmic expansion started. There wasn't matter. There was no matter. There weren't whales. There weren't planets exploding out of a singularity, and moons and stars and asteroids and all that stuff. Because the universe was incredibly hot and dense, and it was way too hot for atoms to coalesce and form nuclei. And without a nucleus, you can't have matter. You can't have solid matter. You can't have gas. So without gas, you can't have stars. You can't have planetesimals forming together, because it wasn't until like 300,000 years later that the universe cooled down enough to where you could actually have atomic nuclei coalescing. So you're wrong when you say, oh, it's a dot of nothing and the whales came from the dot that exploded. It's not a dot of a bunch of matter and whales exploding. It's energy. Okay? So don't say stupid things like that, Kent. Please.
And what caused the explosion? Like
No,
I said,
it wasn't the rapid expansion.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Even though National Geographic says it was an explosion, scientific paper.
Citation, please, Matt Powell. Where does National Geographic say that it was an explosion? It's not an explosion in space. It's a rapid expansion of the physical fabric of space-time itself.
Say it was an explosion. They just butter it up to make it sound like it's not as kooky as it really is. When you say it was just a nice little expansion at the beginning, they're trying to butter it up to make it sound like it's not as kooky as it really is. And if you're an atheist, I'm sorry, it does sound kooky. It does.
Yeah, I agree that scientifically accurate truths a lot of times aren't intuitive. They sound like they're not true, or they're too radical to believe. It's like how relativity proved Newton's ideas about gravity wrong. And people couldn't accept that. When quantum mechanics was first discovered in the early 1900s, Einstein himself hated it. He didn't want to believe it because it seemed totally unintuitive. Quantum mechanics is the most unintuitive field of science, I think, or physics that you could possibly study. And yet it makes mathematical predictions that are accurate down to like the 25th decimal point. So screw your intuition. I don't care if you think it's kooky. The science works. And the computer that you're streaming this stupidity from was created thanks to those same scientific principles. It was also created by Alan Turing, who was somebody who was persecuted for being a homosexual. And I know neither one of you, especially Matt Powell, likes gay people. So I just want to point out the irony of you two live streaming from a computer when you hate gay people. Maybe think about that one.
That sounds like something off Star Trek.
Do you know why? It's kooky. Yeah.
Right.
All right, yeah, it's cookie. Harvard.
All right, I got to call somebody in 8 minutes here. Let me get to chime in here. I think you'll enjoy this.
Now, this alone strongly implies that they share a common ancestor with.
Wait. They share a common ancestry because the whale has mammary glands and the shark doesn't. The fish lays eggs and the whale gives live birth. So this is proof they have a common ancestor?
No, it's pointing out the differences between the two. It's showing how a whale is not a fish, it's a mammal. Did you not listen when he said that, Kent? Or do you just not pay attention and you just wait for your turn to talk so you can insult the person? I think that's what you do, Kent.
Could it be proof they both came from a really smart designer? I mean, they look pretty well designed. I mean,
Well, explain how that is proof. I don't know. Could it be? You tell me, Kent.
don't they do? They seem to do okay. They just will not tolerate that idea of a designer.
Yeah, they seem to do okay is more proof of evolution than it is of a intelligent designer, Kent. Because evolution is about survival and what's good enough to get by and live long enough to reproduce. But I think if you were intelligently designing something, you would have given the whale gills so it doesn't have to surface to breathe.
It's not proof for evolution. I'm sorry, evolution, as he pronounces it.
Land mammals. But what really makes this suggestion even more compelling, and what I'll offer as a first line of evidence, is the curious bone structure of their flippers. Within their flippers, whales have, just like the forelimbs of land mammals, finger, hand, wrist, and arm bone.
This is such a great point. I have said this same thing before, not exactly, but I've wanted to ask Kent. I didn't ask him during our debate, but I wanted to ask this to younger creationists. Why do whales have finger bones? Can somebody tell me that? Like, they don't have fingers. It's like manatees. Manatees have vestigial fingernails. They actually have fingernails. Why do they have fingernails? And they have finger bones as well. Please explain that.
That's proof of something. Did you know the Chevys and the Fords both have 4 tires and a steering wheel? That's proof.
Were they designed by the same person? You're going to be hearing Kent bring up this stupid car point a lot, so I apologize in advance.
Of something to somebody. Is that proof of common ancestor?
Which can be easily explained if these bones are repurposed forelimbs.
It can also easily be explained if the same designer designed everything. What's this guy's name?
Rationality rules.
That's not his name, though.
That's what he goes. This is his fantasy name. They all have fantasy
Oh,
names.
okay.
I suppose Kent wants to know his real name so he can dox the person. Like, I'm pretty sure he did just a few videos ago. I'm pretty sure they gave out the name of a transgender creator, a YouTuber, who I had never heard of. I don't know how they found this individual's channel. And then in Kent's newest video today, they were saying a bunch of just hateful crap about trans people, including this YouTuber, and it's just really gross. But yeah, Kent loves to give out people's names. And I'm sorry, Matt Powell, have you never heard of an internet username? It's not a fantasy name. This is the internet, bro. People have usernames. Like, it's just such a stupid point.
Fantasy name. He's rational? Okay.
But are remarkably hard to explain if they're not. And to invoke a second line of evidence, whales have strange bones that look like shriveled hip, thigh, and shin bones where land mammals have hind legs.
We talked about that many times on our program. We have one in the museum. Damien, you show that to people, right? The whale.
The
whale.
vestigial pelvis.
Vestigial pelvis. Mr. Rationality Rules, that is part of the whale's reproductive system. Whales are really big, okay, like really big. They got to mate in the dark, underwater, with no arms, and they can't talk and say, scoot over, honey. They have to have special apparatus to move things around to make them line up. Nothing to do.
I'll have a 15-foot penis. Rationality Rules. Can I tell you about the 15-foot penis? Bestiality. Oven.
With walking on land. Do some research on whale anatomy. What a dumb evidence for evolution.
I think you've done enough research on whale anatomy for all of us, Kent. Show me your internet history.
And some of these bones, such as these from a bonehead whale, even have what appears to be a ball and socket joint.
Whoa.
A bonehead? This atheist is a bonehead, but that's okay. Often.
Further still, paleontologists have found numerous species within the fossil record that have unique similarities with whales. To present a third line of evidence, a superb example can be found in all mammals, including you, and it's called the left recurrent laryngeal nerve.
There's a long article about this on answersingenesis.org. Frank Sherwin's a good friend of mine there. It works, not ICR.org. He works there at ICR. There's a reason that nerve goes all the way down around like that. We'll do that some other day.
Kent, are you like not even trying anymore? Like, you're just like, oh, there's an article on ICR. There's a good reason for it. I'm not going to talk about it, but it exists. Oven. Bestiality.
Okay. He had talked about anatomy being evidence for evolution. So I put together just a couple things. If you think anatomy, I thought maybe I already missed him using that word here. If you think anatomy is evidence for evolution, let's see here. The human eyeball.
188K views on that video. Good on you, Rationality Rules. Can I just say that the video that I collaborated with Paula Gia on about these two and Steve has almost 90,000 views? Thank you. Thank you to all the people who watched that video.
Is really complex. Every single cell in your body is complex, but the eyeball is amazing. Notice how the optic nerve, I can't point to it here, over on this side there. The optic nerve comes out, and it's not dead center in the back of your eye. Where the nerve comes out, there's a little tiny blind spot because there's no rods and cones there, you can't see. But they're both off center, and they're neither one in the same place. So that's why if you close one eye and look at something in the distance and move your thumb across, all of a sudden it'll enter the blind spot. But when you have both eyes open, you don't have a blind spot. Pretty well designed. Has to have the information exit somewhere through this optic nerve.
As the guy wearing glasses, and I'm wearing glasses too. Oh, the eye was well designed. That's why mine don't work correctly. Dude, I can't see anything without my glasses. Like, I am blind. Like, and that brings up a whole can of worms about God designing people with flaws and developmental deficiencies. Not that there's anything wrong with people who are neuroatypical, but I'm talking about like deformities, like God designing. I don't even want to get into that, but it's pretty messed up if you think about it.
One eyeball, the anatomy of an eyeball is phenomenal. Okay, when you study just the human eye, Psalm 194, he that the ear shall he not hear, he that formed the eye shall he not see. You know how many different kinds of eyes there are? And they all serve the critter just fine. They're all designed. You know, Chevy designed some vehicles to be passenger cars.
What about cave fish that are blind? They have eyes that don't work. Was that designed? And again, with a stupid car analogy.
Station wagons, minivans, trucks, all on a similar frame, I bet. And all four wheels, some six wheels. Huh. Scars of evolution. Did I say it right? Rationality? Okay. Blood vessels that sprawl across the retina's inner surface. Inner surface blood vessels. All kinds.
Inner surface, interwoven.
Of different eyes. They all use this as evidence for evolution. Now, Charlie said, to suppose the eye could have been formed by natural selection seems, I freely confess, absurd. And he goes on for the next couple paragraphs and said, but we know what happened anyway.
No, more like the rest of the chapter, and you should read it, because obviously this is a quote mine because you've edited out part of it, but he goes on to say, oh, but it seems absurd, like I was just saying. A lot of scientific facts seem absurd or like they're not true, but if you actually study the facts about it, you realize that despite your intuition, the science is actually true. Science doesn't care about your common sense.
Okay. The back of your eyeball is less than 1 square inch, has 137 million light-sensitive cells. Let's see. You guys done electrical work? Yep. Hook up 137
That has nothing to do with the video.
million connections in 1 square inch. Do our computers even have that many now?
Computers have way, way, way more transistors than that in a modern processor. So yeah.
Like the little
I don't think
microchips?
so. No, I don't even think that. Yeah, I don't.
Matt Powell, this is the IT director at Dinosaur Adventureland. This is somebody that Ken Hovind has called a computer genius, who says that modern processors don't even have more than 100 million transistors in them. Okay.
I don't think so.
Okay. The light of a shorter wavelength can also produce the same response from an L-cone cell. The human retina contains 120 million rod cells and 6 million cone cells. A healthy human eye has 3 types of cone cells, each of which can register 100 different color shades. Therefore, most researchers ballpark the number of colors we can distinguish
I may be wrong about that. I'm willing to admit if I'm wrong.
at around 1 million. Your eyeball can distinguish 1 million colors. You say, that little darker red. That's why these paint stores go nuts when the women come in there and say, I want it, I don't want that color, a little darker, a little lighter. Right? Let the man go shopping. He'll come back with black or white. That's all you need.
I hate women, Hovind.
Blue, yeah. How many colors can a human really see? 1 million shades. Evidence suggests some people have 4 types of cones, including an additional one, orange one, and are able to see 100 million shades of colors.
And the pistol shrimp can see way more colors than humans. So why did God design the pistol shrimp to have better vision or better color vision than humans? That seems kind of unfair, doesn't it?
I think the human eye is pretty incredible. All these different wavelengths. Now, a dog's eye, as far as they know, dogs can only see a few colors. They're missing out. They don't need to see colors. They don't care. They don't need that. But the light comes in through the blood vessels, hits the back of the eye.
How do you know that dogs don't need that? Seems like kind of a design flaw.
The eye is phenomenal. You can study. Well, you're a nurse. How much training did you do just on the human eye?
A whole course of anatomy.
A whole course of anatomy.
Was included.
Yep. Well, eye scratches will heal quickly, usually within 48 hours unless infection occurs. Well, let's see. One of my longtime friends, Bill Sardi, and a personal genius on nutrition and health, especially with the human eye.
And anti-vaxxer and COVID denier Bill Sardi. That video was ridiculous. I don't know if you guys have seen that, but I'm probably going to skip this part because I'm not here to debunk some guy on the phone.
Said he'd come on for a minute and tell us what he knows about the eye. There we go.
I want to get back to when they're actually watching the video. Can we do that? Do that. Because this has nothing to... Okay, here we go. This whole thing, like, he was just like, he said something about anatomy. He never said the word anatomy. But Kent just is, like I said, he's not even trying. So I want to see him talk about the actual video, even though I know they won't.
Which should be a distance of a few inches. But instead, it goes down into the chest, loops around the main artery, and then goes back up to the voice box, which in the case of the giraffe results in a 15-foot detour. But if, on the other hand, we want to insist that it was deliberately created this way by a designer, then, well, we...
Well, hold it. Do automobiles and manufacturers ever produce vehicles that have a goof in them, and they have to do a recall?
Yeah.
Does that mean nobody's designing it?
Are you saying that God goofed up, Kent? He's supposed to be infallible. Like, what you're saying is heretical, Kent. At least use the excuse of like, humanity was perfect, but then we sinned and now we're fallen and now we have to wear glasses or something like that. Don't say that God goofed up. God's favorite movie is Goof Troop. Oh, Bestiality, Goof Troop, Goofy. Goofy porn?
No. Now, in the case of this nerve you're talking about, there's a good reason that's that way, and we'll cover a whole dual program on that some other time. But
No, do it now. Do the program now.
if it was a mistake as you think it was, it doesn't mean God's a dunce. It means you don't understand why he did it that way. And there's a good reason. See, the giraffe has to bend down to get a drink. Yeah. He's got a special cushion under his brain to absorb the blood impact. It'd blow his brains out when he bent down.
That has nothing to do with the nerve that he's talking about, Kent.
Somebody said, why do giraffes have such a long neck? Because they got long legs. They couldn't get a drink if they didn't have a long neck. Mm-hmm.
Couldn't they lay down on the ground next to the water and drink it that way?
Right?
Right.
Right.
That's
Okay.
a good point.
Yeah.
Don't give that look into the camera, Kent, like like you just made a good point when you didn't. You're not even addressing anything he's saying. Like I said, he's not even trying.
Yeah, we'll get into that later.
Certainly can't call this designer intelligent.
Rationality, I call him incredibly intelligent, and every knee shall bow and every tongue shall confess. You're going to bow and confess that Jesus Christ is Lord to the glory of God the Father someday.
You're gonna die. I hope it's soon. Over. I'm sorry, if that's the best argument you've got, that when we're both dead, you're gonna see that I was right, that's pretty weak.
We'd like to see you do it now before you die, because then things are all different. Then you get in the family. So come on down. 855 Big Dino, extension 3. You can call me. Be glad to talk with you. Schedule a debate. You can be on my program. I'll come on your program, whatever you'd like. But if you believe you have proof of evolution, you are mistaken.
Debate me, Matt Powell. Open challenge. I've asked Matt Powell to debate me, and he said no like twice. He said no because he doesn't like my YouTube avatar. Okay, well, Kent debated me. Are you better than Kent Hovind? Oh, come on, Matt.
There is no evidence. The whale's bone in his pelvis is not a hip bone, part of the reproductive system.
The whale's boner is not part of walking on land. Study some whale bestiality. Over.
Do some studying, sir.
Now, the fourth and fifth lines of evidence that I'm going to present both come from DNA sequencing, which, for those of you unaware, is the process of determining the precise order of nucleotides within a DNA molecule, which, put simply, means that we can compare the DNA of one organism to another, and in doing so, see exactly how closely related they are.
If there are DNA similarities, does that prove evolutionary ancestry?
It's just a glorified example of what he gave earlier. But now he's going into the microscopic realm and saying, well, see, since there's similarities here, we conclude it's literally the same rhetoric, the same stuff that we just debunked. These are the same tired old arguments that we've heard from you atheists for years.
I'm sorry, but genetics is not a tired argument that's been debunked by younger creationism. It's like the death blow to any argument against evolution because it literally proves common ancestry. It proves that organisms are related to each other just the same way that you could take a DNA test and tell that you are related to your own cousin, mother, or father. It's the same process.
How many books are in my library, would you guess? Pick a number, somebody. Thousands. Yeah. Okay. I'd be willing to bet $5 that nearly all of them are made from the same 26 letters of the alphabet.
Again, like comparing evolution of living organisms to something that's not alive. You know, oh, is my book related to each other? Is my book of whale pornography related to the Bible? Hold on.
That proves nobody wrote them.
Look how pleased he is with himself. He's like, oh, well, that proves that that nobody wrote it. Over. Think about it. It's like, Kent, you're not making good points. Like, just stop.
That's their rationality.
Seriously, of the DNA that is comparable, you share 97% with a chimpanzee, 80% with a cow, 60% with a fruit fly, and 50% with a banana.
Wait a minute. What DNA barcodes are you looking at? Are you looking at endogenous retroviruses? What is this study based off of? I'd like to know.
I don't think ERVs are nucleotide sequences of organisms, Matt. think you've got something mixed up.
Well, this would be like comparing my books and saying this book used the letter A, 2% of the time. And this book over here used the letter A 2.1% of the time. So, therefore, they're related?
Can books be related? No? So it's a dumb, irrelevant example? Okay, that's what I thought. And why are you bringing it up? You're saying this as if there is some way to prove that books can be related to each other, but they're not. And this is so stupid, I can't believe that I even have to explain it.
So 97%, by the way, that number is not correct anymore. They've got it down to like 91% now.
Oh, it's only 91%. We're only 91%. Can Oh boy, listen to what he says next.
But even if it was 100% similar DNA, it's still, go look at a monkey, son. They're not human.
It doesn't falsify.
Yeah, go look at chimpanzees in the zoo or orangutans. They do act extremely human. Just look at the face of a chimp. You can't tell me that there aren't features that look really similar to a human being. Look at the ears of a chimpanzee. They're identical in structure to a human ear. I would love for Kent to explain that. And you're saying even if it's 100%, that doesn't prove any relation, that still proves intelligent design? Well, that just proves that you're not ever willing to accept any evidence of evolution, and you're just going to believe your creationist beliefs forever, and that you're not actually engaging with any of this content or any of the questions. I mean, I already knew that, but you just proved it.
Falsify our model. Our model is still consistent, even if we granted that and said, okay, yeah, everything's related, or not everything's related, but everything has the same amount of similar DNA. Okay, fine. Our model would still fit that. So present something else.
Yeah.
Present your model. I would love to see that. Present a unified model of young Earth creationism that has an exact date for when creation happened, when the flood happened, and how many people lived on the Earth before the flood, how many people lived when the pyramids were formed, all of that. Please present a scientific model of creationism. You can't.
Now, most of us have heard this fact before and treated it like it's just a bit of trivia, including myself. But it's far more than this. It's unimpeachable proof that all living things share a common ancestor.
Unimpeachable proof? Are you even willing to consider that?
Consider. I just the viewer feed just updated for me, and it's for the longest time it said I had 3 viewers, but I see it's almost at 50. Thank you to everybody watching right now. I was like, really, 3 people? Thank you to all the people watching.
Maybe this is unimpeachable proof of a common designer.
You say that, but you don't explain how it is. You just say, oh well, maybe it's proof of a common designer, Alvin. But you don't explain how it is, because he's explaining how, in his opinion, this is proof of evolution as a scientific model that explains biodiversity. But you're saying, no, could this prove my shitty theory? And it's like, well, I don't know. Explain how it does, and maybe I'll consider it.
They are awfully complicated. That little molecule you're talking about is more complicated than the space shuttle.
Okay, first of all, I disagree. Second of all, complicated doesn't imply a designer.
One of the things we're supposed to be able to do in science is to make falsifiable predictions. When you say it's unimpeachable proof, that means it's not falsifiable. You need to present something that's falsifiable.
No, that's not what that means, because evolution is perfectly falsifiable. The way that you would falsify it is by giving an example that it violates the law of monophyly. Give an example of a species giving birth to a totally unrelated species, like you seem to claim evolution happens. Like Kent says, oh, well, dogs produce dogs, and dogs give birth to dogs. They don't give birth to cats often. If we saw a dog give birth to a cat, that would disprove evolution. That would falsify it. It's just the fact that genetics are such concrete proof of common ancestry that it's not that it's unfalsifiable. It's just that this is really, really good evidence in favor of this being a true model?
For it to be science.
Sure, not science. It's a religion. Okay.
Is something inherently unscientific if it's religious, Kent? Why is your organization called Creation Science Evangelism then? That's a contradiction.
And the second line of evidence from DNA that I'll present, and the fifth within this video, is that the closest living relative to cetaceans, which is a class that includes whales, is the hippopotamus, a land mammal
Pay attention to the deceptive editing here.
that just so happens to share many.
Hold it. A whale and a hippo are related.
So a whale is just a little, no, a hippo is just a little whale out of water. That's how they should think of
Have
themselves.
you seen the
right?
tail on a hippopotamus? Have you seen the tail on a whale?
That doesn't really matter, Kent. We're talking about at the genetic level. Those are arbitrary physical differences. And hippopotamuses aren't out of water. They spend most of their time in water. Have you ever seen one at the zoo? They love being in water.
Very rare commonalities with cetaceans. For example, both mammals are nearly hairless.
That's just brilliant.
That's proof they're related. I think. What happened? I had a bowling ball under here that is completely hairless.
So does that mean they were also related to scary?
Matter of fact, hey, wait a minute.
No hair?
Right.
I think my globe is completely hairless.
I've heard a rumor that Matt Powell's dad is actually a flat earther. I hope that's true. That would be hilarious.
God is turning into a whale. I never thought of that. Thank you so much.
We got a hairless kid.
The sixth line of evidence.
Okay, did you see that? Did you see how there were obviously going to be more examples? We're going to go, right now, we're going to go to Rationality Rules video, and I'm going to show you Matt Powell's deceptive editing.
Artificial jet very hairless.
Okay, you remember this part? You remember this? And you saw right after this, it switched to a picture of a bunch of dogs. Watch this.
Do not have sweat glands, have remarkably thick bones, are encased in dense fat, have multi-chambered stomachs, give birth to their young underwater, feed their young underwater, and communicate with their kin underwater.
Okay, now watch how far ahead I have to go to get to the dog part. See that? You see all this? That right there is Matt Powell's dishonest editing. Now, let's watch this again.
Both mammals are nearly hairless.
Okay, and then it goes from that
The sixth
to
line of
this.
evidence that
Matt Powell, you are a liar, sir. You are a liar.
I present is the artificial selection of domestic dogs. It's no secret that most breeds of dog have the specific traits that they do because humans have deliberately or artificially selected which dogs get to reproduce.
I would agree.
All
I
the
would
time.
say all the dogs had a common ancestor that looked like a dog. Okay.
All right, it looked more like a wolf. Are wolves dogs? That's what I'd like to know. Are wolves dogs? Because that's evolution.
God said they bring forth after their kind. If you put put that chart up there, and next to it put an apple and a banana and a bird, and say, okay, to a 5-year-old, which ones don't belong in this group?
An apple is not a living organism, Kent. The living organism is an apple tree. The apple is the fruiting body of the tree itself. So right there is you being dishonest. Why can't you tackle the argument in an honest way? It just shows that you're not actually willing to engage with it honestly because you know that you got nothing and you can't actually win if you play fair. So you have to cheat and you have to hire Matt Powell to deceptively edit videos. And this is the exact same thing they did to my video. They edit it together. They edit a huge chunk out and then they laugh at me. They laugh at the person they're showing the video of like they said something stupid. That's super dishonest.
They would leave the wolf in there, wouldn't they? Same kind.
Same kind, same Hovind. Are Matt Powell and Ken Hovind the same kind?
and in doing so, which traits are passed on to subsequent generations.
And most of the dogs they've developed with all this work and stuff they've done are completely useless. My wife's the pug dog.
Which wife? You'll have to be more specific, Kent. Got him.
Chasing a parked car and caught it. Caved the nose right in. So completely useless.
For example, greyhounds have powerful legs, deep chests, flexible spines, and slim builds because humans have deliberately bred dogs with these attributes. The same is true of the tiny height of chihuahuas. They are the result of humans breeding smaller and smaller dogs.
How long would the chihuahuas last out in the woods? Rationality.
Who cares? What's the significance of that? If chihuahuas could last longer in the woods, would that mean evolution is true? What's your point?
Might last a long time because everything else might laugh at them and die themselves.
Great.
On the tour today, we saw a hawk, nearly hit it. I bet the hawk would have chihuahua for lunch. It wouldn't last one day.
Well, sir, I live in San Antonio, which is South Texas, and I can tell you, if you go over to the west side of town, there are tons of stray chihuahuas there, and they do not stop for cars that are coming in the road. They're not wimpy dogs, Kent, and they would probably mess you up. So I don't think you understand the fear that a chihuahua or a pack of them could put in someone.
And the same is also true of the giant height of Great Danes.
How long would the Great Danes last out in the woods?
How long would a German Shepherd or a Rottweiler or a Husky last in the woods? Who cares? This is super irrelevant, Kent.
Probably do pretty good.
Probably a little longer, but they still got, you got to babysit them. You got to feed them.
They are the result of humans breeding bigger and bigger dogs.
Has Kent Hovind never heard of a stray dog before? Like, they do perfectly fine without having somebody babysit them.
Okay, rationality. Are there any limits to this? You got a Chihuahua and a Great Dane. Do you think they'll ever get a dog as big as an elephant? You know, there are animals as big as an elephant.
There are mammals as big as elephants. And dogs and mammals are elephants. Again, what's your point, bro? The limit is based on gravity because an elephant has a very different foot and leg structure than a dog does. An elephant has a bone structure and a leg that's like a massive column and is flat-footed, whereas a dog has like a paw and a dew claw because it's able to rest the weight on its feet, which an elephant can't do because its legs and its feet would break under the weight of its body. So you're comparing, again, two things that aren't the same, but that's classic Hovind, isn't it?
Like an elephant. You think they'll ever get a dog as small as a pygmy hamster?
There's teacup.
Huh?
Teacup poodles.
Chihuahuas and,
Well, they're not as small as a pygmy hamster, are they?
well, no, not as small as a hamster. but
That's about
pretty
small as
close.
it,
They're about the same size as a guinea pig, or, well, maybe not a big gerbil, but I mean, a guinea pig is fairly similar to a mouse. And I owned a teacup chihuahua that was named Taco, and they're tiny, especially when they're puppies. Yeah, they're extremely small.
At some point, you reach a limit. That's what God said. They bring forth after their kind, and those two.
So you reach a limit. That's what God said. They bring forth after their kind. That sentence doesn't make sense because what you just implied was that God said that there's a limit that they reach. But you changed what you were saying. It's not that God said there's a limit. It's that God said they bring forth after their kind, which isn't always true because if you breed a horse and a donkey, you get a mule, which is sterile. And an animal that's sterile can't bring forth after its kind, can it?
Two are still the same kind, called dog.
It may
Dog. Orphan.
not seem like it, but domestic dog breeds alone not only suggest evolution, they demonstrate it.
Wait. Domestic dog breeds not only suggest evolution, but demonstrate it. All they demonstrate is artificial selection.
Which is evolution. And I'm going to repeat the thing that I said when I debated Kent Hovind, that if you took a bunch of dog skulls, like a teacup Chihuahua, a German Shepherd, a Rottweiler, and a Great Dane, and you compared them, and you didn't know what dogs look like, you would probably say they aren't the same kind. But if you compared an Australopithecus afarensis, Homo erectus, and a human skull, you would probably say they're the same kind because of how similar they look. So can you explain that one?
The gene code of the dog has a lot of variety in it. My van has a lot of variety. I can push the pedal slowly or I can push it fast. A lot of variety in speed.
I mean, what do I even say? I don't even know what to say. I'm speechless. I don't know. I weep for our nation and its education system because of people like this. Just go to jail already, Kent. Go to jail.
I can actually turn different directions by turning that wheel. I got all kinds of variety of directions I can go. Now I'm limited. I can't go up, down, or down, but I can go right, left, forward, backward. That's proof we evolved from a bird.
That's proof that you're a dishonest grifter and a hack and a domestic abuser.
Now, as we've just explained, the selective pressure in the case of domestic dog breeds is artificial. It's humans deliberately selecting which dogs get to reproduce. But this raises the immediate question of what exactly selects which organisms get to reproduce in nature. And the answer is nature.
True. They have to survive to get big enough to reproduce. Chihuahuas wouldn't make it.
I don't know if rationality rules will ever see this, but I just wanted to say that this is an excellent video. And I'm really agreeing with all of the points you're making. Great points. And I think Telltale Atheist is also in this video, so shout out to him.
To further explain this, and to give you a few fascinating examples, I'm going to have Thomas from Holy Kool-Aid jump in. Enjoy.
This first example is a bit of a celebrity in the world of evolutionary biology, the peppered
Yeah, I was wrong.
moth. During the Industrial Revolution, coal plants dumped out enough air pollution to kill the light-colored algae on trees and coat the foliage with soot. The light gray moths, which once blended in against the bark of the trees, were now exposed and were picked off by birds and other predators. But a small percent of the population had a rare genetic mutation that led to dark-colored wings. This
Not quite true here, Holy Kool-Aid. There were always two different shades of this moth, dark and light. Some would survive better on lighter colored trees. The birds can't see them as well. Going to pick the dark one. On the dark trees, after they burn coal, the birds can't see the dark ones as well, so they're going to pick off the light ones. One did not devolve into a black moth. There was always a black moth.
Did he say devolve? And no, Kent, it was one singular genetic mutation that led to this darker color morph.
Dark shade of the same moth. There are dark-skinned people and there are light-skinned people today, aren't there? Still people. And this, what you have up on the screen here, is two dead moths glued on a tree trunk for the picture that they took.
How do you know that? You're just saying that. You don't know that that's true, Kent. And even if that was true, that doesn't make the peppered moth evolution not true.
beneficial mutation gave them a survival advantage, allowing them to camouflage in with their changing environment. Before long, the majority of the peppered moth population were the darker variety.
Because they burn coal in the factories and the trees turn dark. The birds could pick off the light ones easier. Nothing is still a moth, still exactly the same kind of moth. That's evidence for evolution. What changed is a ratio of the population. The moth did not change at all.
Okay, so I just Googled this, and it says that the Drosophila court gene, a single mutation to that gene, is what caused the darker color.
Not at all.
But in the 1950s, clean energy reform reversed this trend, causing the dark moths to be more vulnerable.
That is correct. They cleaned up the air pollution stuff, and the trees turned light again, and now population is more 95% light moths. I agree. Still a moth.
Leading to a resurgence.
Of course it's still a moth, Kent. It's an example of natural selection, dude. You're not, like, you can't even understand what the argument is, Kent. You're like a child who wanders into a movie halfway through and then complains that you don't understand the plot.
resurgence in the lighter colored
Go to jail, Kent. Just go to jail.
moths, who are still the dominant variety in the less polluted countryside. Now that genome sequencing has become available and affordable for scientists, researchers at the University of Liverpool have pinpointed the exact mutation that caused color change.
There was no mutation that caused the color change. There's always been dark.
Yeah, there literally is, Kent. Google it. Go to jail, Kent. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Take Matt Powell with you.
Dark and light moths.
Even if
Another
we granted that there was a mutation, even granting their argument, so what? They're still a moth,
Didn't turn into a hawk.
and it didn't turn into something different.
That's not how evolution works. You don't have one singular moth that turns into a bird. It's populations of animals that change over long periods of time due to mutations just like this. But this was an example of natural selection that occurred in a human lifespan, and you have nothing to refute it. You just say, oh, so what? Well, go to jail, Kent.
And they say, well, you have to have time for evolution to take place. Well, a mutation is defined as an error. So the more mutations you have, the more errors accumulate in the genetic pool. The more errors you have in the genetic pool, the more likely your population is to go extinct. So no matter how you want to play this game, it cannot and will not go your way, because that which we've demonstrated to be true has falsified that which you believe.
All right, a few more minutes before I puke.
Before you go to jail?
An example of evolution in action is the silent crickets of Hawaii. To attract a mate, male crickets on the island of Kauai would rub their wings together to create a chirping noise. Several years ago, a parasitic fly entered their ecosystem, honing in on the noisy crickets and laying larvae inside of them that would eat them from the inside out. A rare mutation on the X chromosome caused some crickets to develop without the ridges on their wings required to chirp. Natural selection did its thing, and within just 20 generations, 95% of the crickets on the island were silent. When the flies migrated to Oahu a few years later, the crickets there independently underwent the same life-saving evolutionary change via a different mutation. Now that's all fine and dandy cricket.
Wait. So the crickets that chirped got the eggs laid on them and ended up dying because they had the thing on their wing that was different. So one of them had a mutated wing, unable to chirp. That now took over the population. That's very reasonable. Probably good study. Yeah, sometimes people come to the good study, but the wrong conclusion.
He can't even admit that this even happened. Like, you're so dishonest, Kent. Go to jail.
And that's what they did here. So it's still a cricket. It's a
And you're still a wife beater.
mutated cricket.
Well, if it's turning genes on and off, and I don't want to make a knowledge claim on this, but from what I understand,
Matt Powell wants to take Kent Hovind's genes off. Go to jail, Kent.
This is
I'm sorry. I'm losing my patience.
dealing with the realm of epigenetics. Epigenetics simply is a switch of pre-existing gene information. So if you need to be able to avoid making that sound, those genes would get shut off in the populations over time. And so that's just an epigenetic change. That's what I would assume that to be.
It's a loss of information. It's not
If
a
it is a
gain.
mutation, it's a loss of information.
Yeah, it's a loss. They didn't gain nothing.
They gained the ability to not die. That sounds like a gain to me.
Might argue, but those are all examples of microevolution, not macroevolution. Animals never change species or reproduce outside their kind, which brings us to ring species. For this, we'll take a look at the greenish warbler of the Himalayas.
He just admitted they
No, he did not just admit anything, Kent. He was saying what your argument is. Listen to the video. Go to jail.
never come outside their species.
Yeah, that was a really horrible explanation of epigenetics, too. Jesus Christ, Matt Powell.
Right. Which is still the same animal.
Which biologists believe migrated south to north, branching east and west around the mountains. As time passed, they evolved and adapted to their new environments. But by
They didn't evolve. Adapted, I would agree. God gave them the ability to adapt to new environments.
Why didn't God simply put the animals in the right environment in the first place? Why did he give animals with longer fur the ability to adapt to cold environments instead of simply putting animals with long fur in cold environments in the first place? And how does he allow animals to adapt if they're on a changing planet that has changing weather conditions? I know you guys don't believe in climate change, but I'm just saying. Go to jail, Kent.
That's built in. You know, my car has a heater and an air conditioner. I can adapt to cold weather or adapt to warm weather.
Well, hopefully you can adapt to living in a jail cell, Kent.
I think it's proof somebody was thinking ahead and they designed it. Yeah.
By the time they met up north of the Himalayas, they were so different that they were no longer able to interbreed.
Okay, now take a look at them. The top two. What would you say they both are? Bird. Bird.
Dinosaurs.
That's obviously a T-Rex. You can see.
Good one. Yeah, obviously.
Yeah, because the T-Rex is the only dinosaur that has ever existed.
A T-Rex. Yeah.
And this is evidence for your theory that everything came from a dot of nothing, and we all have a common ancestor, an amoeba. They're desperate.
Well, even if this is a case
Desperate for you to go to jail, Kent.
of evolution, number one, it's still reductive. So you end up with these two different populations that can't interbreed. Yeah, that's reductive. That's deleterious by definition.
Matt Powell, don't try to talk about genetics, dude, because you're going to hurt yourself. If you guys want a better debunking of Matt Powell when it comes to genetics and the fake idea of genetic entropy than I could give on my channel, go to the channel Creation Myths that has my friend Dr. Dan on it. He's a Rutgers professor and a virologist and an actual doctor, not like Kent, who's a fake doctor. And he did a video about Matt Powell, because Matt Powell did a video about genetic entropy, and he debunks it really well. His whole channel is great. So I'm not going to get into the genetics because that's not something I'm really knowledgeable about, which I can actually admit, but that's a good channel to go to if you want a further deep dive on this type of topic.
And then number two, we would predict in our model that we would have a lot of reshuffling of previously existing genes. So that's just reshuffling to the point where they can't reproduce. Still consistent with our model, so try harder.
And they're always losing. It's like the guy wanted to do the experiment with the dog. He would call the dog and it would come and put the dog back and cut off one leg and said, "Come here, Spot." And the dog came a little slower.
What? Kent, I've heard Kent give this like stupid example before, but he usually does it with a frog. Doing it with a dog is a lot more gruesome, but I have a video called Kent Hovind Hates Dogs. So watch that. But
So I got back, cut off another leg. Said, "Okay, come here, Spot." The dog came a lot slower. Cut off a third leg. Dog came real slow this
dude, I don't want to think about that, Kent. What is wrong with you?
time, but the dog came. Put it back, cut off the fourth leg. Said, "Come here, Spot." Spot didn't move.
Yeah, because he bled out and died while whimpering slowly.
"Come here, Spot." Spot didn't move. So he concluded the dog went deaf. They're losing information, guys.
Is that funny? What's funny about that? It's just sick.
Each bird reproduced with its southern neighbors all the way back around the loop, but they couldn't reproduce with each other. A textbook example of evolution in progress.
That's a textbook example of evolution in progress. Guys, look at me carefully. It's a bird. Bird.
If I've ever seen one.
If you've never seen
Thanks for those brilliant examples, Thomas. As always, you're on form, sir. Before we even begin this video, a simple but necessary clarification must be made.
That was the
Okay.
video.
That was it. Goes for, okay. I'm sorry, rationality. You are not rational at all. Okay. You need to get a new name.
Kent, shut up. Go to jail. Okay. Well, that's the end of the video. The rest of the video is just, I don't know, but it's the end of the relevant content, and my patience has reached its limit with these two. They didn't engage with the content at all, which was really good content. They deceptively edited it, or Matt Powell did, cut out parts of the arguments, which is exactly what they did to me in Paulogia's video. And yeah, they're just dishonest, grifters, and can't go to jail. So we have over 50 viewers in the chat. I want to say thank you to the people watching the stream. Thank you. Thank you to all my new subscribers. Thank you to my patrons. I've just got 2 new patrons in the last week. Thank you to all the people who watched the Paulogia video. It's almost at 90,000 views, which is awesome. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video. So I'm going to end the stream now. Peace.